Alright, here is the learning target number 4 video. I can visually represent a percent using a 10 by 10 grid or a strip diagram, okay? Now, well, let's just go ahead and flip the page. I want to say 7 in here. 7. Page 7. Okay? Now, a 10 by 10 grid, first of all, we've already talked about. We talked about them earlier in this chapter. We've talked about them on review sheets. We've talked about them, in different situations. So, this shouldn't be any big deal here, to be very honest, okay? I just want to start by just recapping real quick here. I want to remind you that the number 1, so just the number 1 itself, is equal to 100%, okay? And I want to go a step further here, and I want to say, okay, 0.1 is the same as 10%. Okay? And I also want to remind you that 0.01 is the same as 1%. Now, this might seem like review and very obvious, kind of, because you guys know that when you have irregular numbers, which I have here on the left, the decimal moves to the right 2 places. So moving it 2 places would make 100. Moving this 2 places would make it 1, 2, 10. And this would make it 1. This is the most important thing. You must know. On the left, we're talking regular numbers. On the right, we're talking percents. They are the same thing. If I say 100th, like that, 100th, I could mean 3 things. If I said 100th, I could mean 0.01, I could mean 100th, or I could mean 1%. Okay? If I said 0.1 or 1/10, I could mean 1/10, or I could mean 10%. Okay, they are the same thing, and then obviously 1 and then 100%. Okay, 1 over 1. Okay, so that's the first key here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's supposed to be a line going down through here. I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll fix it real quick. Good enough. Okay, so we went through this, but I just want to recap here real quick. This whole entire thing, the whole rectangle here, this whole thing right there, the entire thing, that represents one whole, or 100%. That top one there, that's what it represents. Okay, a strip of 10 of these, 10 little squares in the inside, that represents 10%. Okay, or 0.1. Okay, so that's important, and I've already covered that on review sheets, so I don't think that's going to just blow you away. I think you guys know that. Okay, that one strip represents 0.1. So let's go ahead and write 0.10 up there for that strip. Okay, and then this one little square inside here. Oop, not good enough. Let me redo that one more time. Okay, that represents 1%. Okay, so we'll write 1%, or I could write 0.01, or I could say 100th, just like I did here. So one little square is what I'm trying to show you, the little square in there. One strip could be any of these. Okay, now that's important. All these are representing is how many little hundredths, how many hundredths. When I say hundreds, I could also be saying how many percents out of 100. So if I want to know if I'm trying to model or visually represent, which just means model, let's go ahead and write that. Model 50%, that means I need to shade in 50 little squares. Or think of it as I can shade in 5 strips, 5/10ths, because 5 times 10 is 50. Okay? Let's go down. 100% means 100 out of 100. Okay? Again, my line is missing, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. But we'll throw one in there. Okay? But 100% means, okay, all 100. I have a whole pizza. I have all my pieces of pizza. Okay? 75% means 75 out of 100. So far, this is probably like, wow, I can't believe he's actually going over this, because this is very easy. But it means I have 75 shaded, and if I counted this whole entire thing up, then there would be 100 total squares in there. Okay? That's why it's called a 10 by 10 grid, because it's 10 rows by 10 columns. Remember, columns go up and down, rows go left to right. There's 10 by 10, which means there are 100 total squares. Let's go ahead and go to the next page. Okay. Now, this is where it doesn't get harder. I don't even want to say that. It doesn't get harder, but it may trick you just for a second. Okay, if I said 108%, doesn't that mean that I have over a whole pizza? This is greater than 100%. So if I have 100% of pizza, my pizza, I have the whole thing. So this means that I must have started with 2 pieces of pizza, or 2 total pizzas. I must have started like this. I still have all of this one, so shaded in. I still have the entire first pizza, but then I just have a little bit of this one. Okay, but doesn't matter, because 108% is 108 out of 100. Doesn't matter. Okay, I'll do 1 here. Okay. Okay, we got to model or visually represent this, what 10% would look like. Well, I know that 10% would be 10 out of 100. So I need to shade in 10 of them. Okay? Well, you could count out 10 if you wanted to, or you could skip and do the cheat step like I'm doing and just know, okay, I can just shade in a whole strip. Makes sense, right? Let's go on to the next one. I know this is 78% out of 100. So I need to shade 78 of these things. So rather than shade, I mean, I don't think you guys want, okay, 1, 2, 3. I don't think you want to do that, do you? It's much easier just to look at it and say, okay, I know that I have 7 whole strips. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? There's 7 strips right there. Okay? I know I covered up the black, but that's okay. It doesn't make a difference. So right there is 70. Let me do that in a different color. Right there is 70%. Right there's 70. Well, it didn't ask for 70%. It asked for 78%. So what I got to do is I now got to go down through there and I got to shade in 8 more of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, 78%. How many should I have unshaded? I should have 22 of them. 1, 2, and then 10, 10, 2. So that's 22. Okay, you guys go ahead and try the next 2 on your own here. Just 93% and 120%. Go ahead and try those, please. Okay, so 93%, pretty easy. Okay, so I know that I got to fill in. Like I said, you could go through here and shade each individual one. 1, 2, 3. You could do it that way if you really wanted to. I just would advise you guys to do strips. I know that it's got 9 whole strips. So there's 1 strip, 2 strips, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? Pretty easy. There's 9. So that's 90% right there. I know that I need to shade how many more? 3. 1, 2, 3. I should have 7 unshaded. This is very, very basic, guys. I have a feeling you guys think this is very, very easy right now, which is awesome. Very happy. Now, we got 120%, which means I have more than 100. So without even thinking, everybody should just do this. Everybody should have done this. Filled in that whole thing and said, okay, right there's 100% right there. That's 100%. That's it. I know that I had more than 100, so the whole first hole has to be shaded. Now I can go back and fill in the rest in my next 10 by 10 grid. Okay, I know that it's 20%, so there's 10%. There is 20%, and there you go. There's 120%. Here's 10. Here's 10. All together, it makes 120%. Pretty basic, I think. Okay. Now, going the other way, you may have to actually tell me what percent. Look, instead of me giving you the percentage, you might have to figure it out. Well, this is even easier, probably. You just count them. Count your strips. well, actually, if you wanted to, you could go through here and count every individual one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then count up how many are shaded. That's the easiest way, and that's your percentage. You could do it that way, sure. But I'd rather you just get in the habit of going, okay, there's 10. Let me use a different, little smaller font there. Okay. Maybe I can even zoom in a little bit. Okay. There's 10% right there. There's 10% right there. There's 10% right there. And if anybody's wondering where I'm getting that, I know that that's a strip, which I know there are 10 little ones in a strip. 10% there. 10% there. 10% there. 10% there. Okay. So far, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%. And then I know that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 additional ones. So I know the answer is 74%. Okay? Let's go on to the next page. Okay, now let's get into what you guys need to learn what this is, because you've probably never heard of them. A strip diagram. A strip diagram. Everybody write that up at the top, because you need to know that term. Strip diagram. Got to know it. What a strip diagram is, it's kind of like you guys did bar modeling. It's similar, I guess, kind of. It helps you to determine things, and I'm going to show you exactly how this works. I mean, it's very much like the 10 by 10 grid. It just is slightly different. So what I've done is I've created these. Actually, not me. Mr. Edwards, Mrs. Allen, and I. We've created these little strip diagrams. These are the only strip diagrams you can have, because this is the only way you can break 100% up evenly. In other words, if I said, what are the factors of 100? Well, you would say 1, 2, 5. You go on forever. Okay. The whole key to this is you got to remember this. The whole thing, the entire bar, always represents 100%. Okay. Even down here, even though it's cut into little chunks, the whole thing represents 100%. Doesn't make a difference. Okay. So let's think about this. This strip diagram is cut into 100% into 2 pieces. So what's got to be the percent of each? Well, 50-50, right? That's easy enough. So what that tells me is that 50 and 2 are factors of 100. That's it. It's just an even, it's basically asking how many ways can you cut 100 up evenly. That's all strip diagrams do. Okay? Here I'm cutting into 4 pieces. So 100 divided by 4 is 25%, 25%, 25%, and 25%. Okay? Here it's cut into 5 pieces. So I do 100 divided by 5. 20%, 20%, and I hope you're writing this definitely, because these are you're going to have these out when you're doing these on the worksheet tomorrow. Okay? And then finally, this one is cut into 10 pieces, so that means 100 divided by 10 is 10. So 10%, 10%, 10%. I'm just going to write 10 from now on because I'm getting tired of writing percent. Okay? Pause if I went a little bit too fast writing that. But what I'm just trying to get you guys to see is that this is the only way you could break 100% up. Now, some of you might be sitting there, wait a minute. Couldn't I break it up into 20 pieces of 5%? Yeah, you could. I'll show you what I mean by that. You guys don't have to draw this, but you can just watch. If you wanted, sure, you could cut it into 20 pieces. That's 5%, 5%, and so on. Okay? You guys get the picture there. You could do it that way, but, I mean, we're getting kind of crazy. I mean, we could also go all the way down. Couldn't we do 100 pieces of 100? Or 100 pieces of 1, I mean? So cut it into 1% 100 times. You could do either one of those two. But these are the main ones that I want you guys to focus on. This is not going to be overly hard. Okay, this is just getting a true understanding of why percentages do what they do. Okay? That's why if you think about, okay, what is 25% of 60? We'll just say 25% of 60. You guys learned in learning target number 2 or 3, you know, okay, I turned that to a regular number, that becomes that. Okay, that's just memorizing an algorithm. I don't want you guys to remember algorithms. I want you to take this and I want you, okay, 25% of 60. Well, I know this whole bar right here. I know this whole entire bar equals 100%. So that means the bar, going back to my, what did I just have? I had 25% of 60. That means if I was doing that problem right here, that means the whole bar equals 100%. It also means the whole bar equals 60 because 60 represents the whole. Okay? So how do you figure out what this is? Well, if you took 100 and divided it by 4, then wouldn't you just take 60 and divide it by 4? And you don't have to write this. Please don't. But if you had that, that would tell you that each one of these pieces would have 15 in it. So 25% would be 15. 50% would mean there'd be 30. 75% would be 45. And then 100% would be 15. Okay, so that should make sense, I think. So, going to the next page now. We're on page 10. Okay, you can see that this is what I'm talking about. This whole entire strip right here, the whole entire strip diagram represents 100%. Please write that. Okay, that's the whole key to this. It's just showing you that the whole amount represents 100%. And this is why it probably reminds you of bar modeling a little bit, what we're doing. Okay? Now, depending on the question, you know that 100%, it's always, the whole strip's always going to equal 100%. But depending on the question, you got to figure out, okay, what else does it equal? This question, if the entire strip diagram represents a class of 30 students, okay, so that means this whole thing represents 30 students. Okay? And it's broken into 10 pieces, 10 chunks, right? Because 10 times 10 would be 100. So that's why that's broken evenly. Each little section here is the exact same. 10%, 10%, 10%. Okay? How many students would be in each? Well, if there are 10 sections and there are 30 total students, we know we just need to do 30 divided by 10. And I know there would be 3 students in each one. Now think about this. If I added up all these 3's right here, it better give me 30. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, and 30. Okay, so how many students would be in each? 3. Now, where this is really going to become important, okay, because this is just basics, guys. Don't think this is all we're going to be doing. There's more to this. You're going to see in the coming examples here. What we're getting to is it's not going to say how many students would be in each 10%. It's going to say, okay, how many students would be in 60%? That's what it's going to end up having you do. Okay, so then you'd say, okay, well, 60% would be 6 of these chunks. So 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would mean 18 students in 60%. So in other words, 60% of 30 is 18. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, if the entire strip represents 100%, obviously, we always start there. I always want you to write that. Okay, if the entire strip diagram represents $255. Okay, well, that's fine. The price of a digital video player, how much is each 10% section worth? So it's pretty easy. We just got to do the total amount, 255, and we need to divide it by 10, which is going to be $25.50. Okay, so each section is going to be $25.50. $25.50. $25.50. $25.50. Okay, and so on. You guys get the picture. It's $25.50 in every one. And once again, I might say, okay, well then what's 30% of 255? Well, then you'd add those 3 sections. Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. The entire strip represents 600 students in the school. Fill in each piece of the strip diagram with the correct percentage. There's a lot to this. So first of all, this strip right here is cut into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. So I know that this whole thing equals 100%, right? So if it's 100, if the whole thing equals 100, and I know it's cut into 5 pieces, I need to figure out evenly. What is 100 divided by 5? And it is 20. So that means each strip is cut into 20%. Okay? 20%. Nothing groundbreaking about that, I don't think. I think you guys get that. Okay, so each one's 20%. Okay, the entire strip also equals it equals 600 people. That's truly what it means. So it basically is saying that 100% of the people is 600. So that means in this school there are 600 students. So this whole diagram right here, the whole entire thing represents 600 people. Well, we got to do the same thing here. We got to break 600 into 5 groups. Okay, if you need to get your calculator out, you may. 600 divided by 5, 120. So that means each strip, each piece has a, 120 students, 120 students, 120 students, 120, 120. Now if you want to check that, just to make sure, do 120 times 5, just to be sure that it equals 600, you can. Alright, so let's figure out what the question is asking exactly. Okay, I've just gone and I've just filled in my information. That's all I've done. Okay? Fill in each piece of the strip with the correct percentage. Okay, that's easy. We did that. How many students are in each section? Well, we did that. 120. Now, 40%. Actually, before I even read that question, let's just think about this. If I asked you what 20% of 600 was, would you know what it is? You better. It's 120. Okay? If I asked you what 40% of 600 was, you know that you got to just add 120 and 120. You better know. Okay? So 20% is 120. 40%, which is 2 of these sections, would be 240. 60%, which would be 3 of the sections, would be 360. Just adding up the 120s. 80% of 600 would be 480. And then obviously 100% of 600 equals 600. Okay? That's just, I hope you're seeing why we're doing this. Okay? 40% of these students are going on a trip. How many students is this? So if 40%, 40% of them, that would include that strip, that piece, that chunk, and that would include that chunk. So that means 120 and 120 are going. There are 240 students going on the trip. Okay? Let's go ahead and go to the next page. Alright. This is a little bit different now on this one. First of all, you have to draw your own strip. That's going to make it a little bit different right away. So I'm just going to start there by drawing my own strip. Now, what makes this problem truly different is it doesn't give you a percentage. It asks for a percentage. Whereas the previous ones have always given us a percentage, which told us what we needed to cut our chunks into. Okay? So Mr. Garrison had to sell 120 boxes of Girl Scout cookies for his troop. Yes, I did. He was only able to sell 24 boxes. What percent of his goal did he meet? So what you have to do here is you actually got to go back to Learning Target 3. And you got to say, okay, if I sold 24 boxes and I needed to sell 120, I need to turn that to a percentage. Okay? So I get out my calculator and I do 24 divided by 120. Whoops. Let me start that over again. 24 divided by 120. It's going to give me 0.2, which I know is 20%. Right there, bang. So we know that I sold 20%. That's the answer. The answer is 20%. However, you still must model it. You know, remember back when chapter 3, you could find the answer using the algorithm, but ultimately you had to model it as well. Okay? So if we do that, let me shorten this thing up a little bit. Okay? I know that I got to cut this thing into something that's going to allow me to figure out 20%. So it's pretty easy because I know that 20% is what I want to go with here because I know that I can break it into 20% and evenly. 20%, 20%, 20%. Okay. I need to. So this whole thing equals 100%. It also equals 120 boxes. So I know that I'm dividing it by 5. So I got to take 120 and I got to divide it by 5 to figure out how many Girl Scout cookies are in each one. Okay. Now when you do that, you're going to figure out that it is 24. 24 boxes, 24 boxes, 24 boxes, 24 boxes, and 24 boxes. That's what each 20% represents 24 boxes that I should have sold. Okay? So, in other words, if I asked you, if I said, okay, how many, if I wanted to sell 60% by, let's say, Christmas or something, if I wanted to sell 60% of my Girl Scout cookies, how many would I need to sell? Well, that's where you could now look at the strip and you could say, okay, well, 60% would be 3 of these, so I got to add up these 3 right here. And that's going to give me 72, right? But that's not the question. I'm just trying to show you where this is going. Okay? Same thing here. Jasmine got 15 out of 20 correct on her quiz, so that means 15 correct out of 20 total. Let's turn that to a percent. So I'm just going to do it per 100, and then I'm going to multiply by 5. Multiply by 5, and I'm going to get 75. Okay? So I know that the answer to this question is 75%. Okay? So what can I break this into that would allow me, do I want to break it into 20? This is where you guys are probably going to, this is where it gets a little bit hard. And you think, well, would you want to break it into 20%? 20, 20, 20, and 20? Would that help me figure out 75%? No, it wouldn't. Okay? This is where you got to kind of think, about it and say, okay, 75. Let's go back to this page here. Which one of these would allow me to get to 75? Hopefully you're all saying this one right here. Break it into 25s. Okay? So 25s. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Each one of these represents 25%. Okay? And it's going to be, the whole thing represents 100%. It also represents 20 total questions. Okay? I do 20 divided by 4. That means 5 questions in each chunk. So, to figure out 75%, I would have to look at 3 of these sections. That is 15. Hope you're seeing how I'm doing that, guys. Makes perfect sense when you start laying it out there. Okay, here, Andrew was given an allowance of $20. 40% of the allowance was used to go to the movies. How much was spent on the movies? Okay, so I got to break this. I got to figure out 40%. So I got to think, what should I break this into? Well, hopefully you're all saying 20 sections of 20%. You could also break it into sections of 10% too, however you want to do it. Okay, so 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, and 20%. Okay, this whole thing represents 100%. It also represents his whole allowance of $20. Okay, so I got to do 20, and I need to divide it into my 5 groups. That means each 20% is actually $4. $4. Okay, so 40% was used to go towards the movies. Well, there's 40%, 2 sections. That means $8 was used to go to the movies. Okay? Hope you're seeing how I'm doing that. Last one here, and then I'm sorry this is running a little bit longer than I like it to. I apologize. Lynn is saving money to buy a computer. She saved $150. You know what? Let's just skip this one, and we'll just call it right there. So, see you guys tomorrow.